Hey guys, LevelCap here, and today in gaming, Microsoft Flight Simulator has quite literally set a new precedent for scale and fidelity in gaming. Apex Season 6 is live with some major changes and more. Now starting off, Microsoft Flight Simulator launched last night, and despite some trouble with getting the game downloaded properly, it's been an absolutely mind-blowing experience. The entire world literally is rendered in a 1-to-1 scale with all the major cities, airports, and natural wonders of the world represented in a playable area. You can quite literally fly around the entire Earth. Seamlessly, I believe. I haven't personally tried it yet, and in fact, one Redditor has already planned out their route and is currently embarking on a 3-month journey around the world. Now, it's really not just the scale that leaves a strong impression with this game. The attention to detail and level of immersion on display is absolutely astounding, and while not every square inch of the game is handcrafted to perfection, the vast majority of what you'll be looking at stands up to intense scrutiny. Looking out the window of your airplane while flying over the Burj Khalifa, flying past the Golden Gate Bridge, or thousands of feet above the ocean, it's obvious the devs have crafted a genuinely next-generation experience. Now, before I continue, I have a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. They're an affordable VPN provider with some pretty competitive features. Like many other VPNs, Surfshark uses AES 256 encryption, which is the gold standard for security. But unlike most competing VPNs, Surfshark includes an ad blocker, a whitelister, allows torrents, and has independent auditing. It also includes a no borders mode that unlocks websites some countries censor. You get a lot more bang for your buck with Surfshark over competitors without sacrificing features or security. They have apps for Mac, Windows, Linux, iOS, Android, and even game consoles. So no matter what device you're using, Surfshark can secure it. Now, unlike the competition, Surfshark doesn't limit how many devices you can connect at once. This is great for small businesses and families with lots of online devices. You can keep your employees and family safe from malicious ads and insecure websites without paying an arm and a leg. For more info and to sign up for Surfshark VPN, check the link in the video description. If you use my code LevelCapGaming at checkout, you'll get 85% off and 3 months for free, which is a huge deal. So thank you very much to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. Now getting back to things, of course, Microsoft Flight Sim's insane scale and level of detail comes at a cost. It's an incredibly demanding game, even on lower settings. On maximum settings, I was lucky to get 30 FPS in dense urban areas. In almost any other game, I'd count that as a detriment to the experience, but in Microsoft Flight Sim, it's really not that big of a deal. In fact, I kind of look at the ultra settings as sort of future-proofing for the game, if you will, when we get faster and better hardware, so that you can fly at a higher frame rate at those insane visual options. Even at medium settings though, the game still looks fantastic. Now, the average gamer could easily find issue with many sims that lean too heavily on reality. Microsoft Flight Sim gives you the best of both worlds thanks to its accessibility options. You can have a hardcore, true-to-life experience, or you can tone down the realism to make flying much easier, in fact, nearly automated. You can even engage an AI pilot who will handle the plane's full control at any time for the duration of a trip. Now, when it comes to an airplane's interior, I'm certainly no expert, but I can only assume that the dizzying array of buttons and options lives up to the expectations of sim players out there. Likewise, all the weather, air traffic, and time of day information are generated from real-world data. You can also change the weather, time of day, temperature, date, and more. All of these adjustments have a tangible impact on how your aircraft flies. It also makes for some truly stunning visuals on demand. It's definitely one of those games where you just kind of have to sit back and appreciate how far our modern tech has brought us, and I honestly couldn't believe certain things were even possible a lot of the time while playing. Star Citizen blew my mind last year with its procedural city planet generation, and while that was certainly equally impressive for a whole different set of reasons, Microsoft Flight Sim blows my mind because not only can I fly over my hometown, I can fly over anyone's hometown. The whole world is there to explore in basically full detail. In fact, while I was flying around where I currently live and I just moved up to Washington State, I was just getting some ideas of, hey, maybe there's some cool places to go exploring over here. You get a much better lay of the land when you're watching things from a bird's eye view. Now, things get even crazier when you consider the long-term future of the game. Third-party developers and modders can create assets that you will be able to buy in-game. Right now, there's just a handful of things like a London overhaul and one additional plane. But I can imagine the marketplace will be brimming with exotic locations, missing landmarks, expanded urban areas, and more. If there's an area that players find lacking, I'm sure eventually someone out there will probably make an improved version. Microsoft put in a huge amount of work with this game, but it's awesome to think that they could let crowdsourcing handle the rest of it in terms of just ironing out every single detail. Imagine you live in a small town where the developers have probably never heard of and nobody's going to make a high fidelity version of it, but if you have the willingness and know-how, you could certainly flesh out your entire hometown to make it look amazing and run in your game. There's also, of course, official DLC in the works, and word around the campfire is helicopters are around the corner. Flying a plane over Philadelphia is certainly an incredible experience, but being able to maneuver a helicopter between the buildings has me wishing time travel was a thing so I could hurry up and play it. Now, as for how much of a game Microsoft Flight Simulator actually is, it's tough to say. Despite the insane scale and impressive visuals, at its core, the game is a flying simulator. You're not going to be running supply missions across the globe or being told where to fly by some random NPC. There are tutorials and challenges that will help you learn the game and explore the world, but the rest is really up to you. That being said, I could certainly see a future where flight plans, missions, or even new mechanics are added as part of DLC. Imagine being able to fly commercial planes across the country full of passengers. Instead of role-playing as a captain with your friends, you could simulate being an actual commercial pilot. And speaking of your friends, Microsoft Flight Sim supports multiplayer, so you can actually fly with your friends around the world. I'd love to see some tighter integration with multiplayer, maybe even something like a co-pilot mode could be interesting to explore. Now, of course, this isn't a perfect game. As I mentioned earlier, Microsoft Flight System was built as a next-generation game, so unless you have beefy hardware or are willing to drop settings very low, getting above 60 FPS, especially in urban areas, is quite challenging. As much as I wouldn't say it hurts the experience, more FPS is always better, and I think the devs could probably do something to boost performance a little. The other sore spot of the game is areas that lack extensive terrain detail. Some cities, mostly outside the US, just don't have the same fidelity as more of the handcrafted areas. This is primarily due to the developers not having high quality map data for certain regions of the world. They've done a lot to fill in the gaps, and even if the surrounding area isn't very detailed, important landmarks and airports should still be represented. But the thing is, even at its worst, Microsoft Flight Sim still looks incredible. Also, did I mention that it simulates literally the entire planet with a realistic day-night cycle and realistic flight mechanics? Because it does. It's a pretty incredible package. Apex Season 6 has made considerable changes to the game's meta and World's Edge map. Besides adding a new hero, which generally changes the meta drastically, Respawn have also reworked the entire armor system. All armor aside from gold is now Evo armor. This is the armor that levels up as you do damage. Before Season 6, the highest tier of Evo armor, the red tier, gave you 225 HP. This was an enormous amount of HP that let you tank damage from entire squads. Evo armor is now capped at 200 HP. This is still a lot, of course, but it feels much more balanced in practice. You're not suddenly running into a brick wall if your opponent has red armor. The overall impact of the changes is a snappier TTK that leads to less prolonged firefights and quicker battles with a decisive victor. Space Sim Elite Dangerous is getting space legs next year with its Odyssey expansion. This update will finally let players explore the galaxy on their own 2 feet. It also expands and improves planet generation beyond dead chunks of rock hurtling through space to celestial bodies with atmospheres. The developers are releasing a series of videos covering Odyssey leading up to the launch, and part 1 focuses on these big picture elements. Future videos will focus on other areas of the expansion, likely diving deeper over over time. It's kind of interesting seeing Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen approaching the same ultimate conclusion from the opposite ends of the spectrum. Star Citizen is being built with a long and winding series of alpha builds, while Elite Dangerous is polishing each aspect of the game to a high degree and releasing them as expansions over time. Call of Duty Warzone's latest exploit is a doozy. It turns the underbarrel shotgun attachment for the FAMAS into a one-shot machine. Anyone caught in the shotgun's blast is almost guaranteed to have their armor broken in a single hit, if not downed outright. The potential for kills with this is astronomically high compared to any other weapon in the game. Obviously, this wasn't an intentional change, and the developers are already working on a fix. While I wouldn't expect it to stick around much longer, it's probably already ruined matches for countless players. Retro sci-fi shooter Deathloop has been delayed to next year. The game is being developed by the same studio that did Dishonored and Prey, and just like those games, it looks like it is dripping with style. The gameplay also looks well crafted and refined. It will now launch in the second quarter of 2021. In our final story today, test flights for Halo 3 ODST on PC have begun. The Master Chief Collection PC ports recently hit a high note with Halo 3, which is arguably the best port since many fans consider it to be their favorite game. First impressions of this test flight are not in, however, but stay tuned as we'll be taking a look at the quality of ODST's port in tomorrow's episode. And that wraps it up for today in gaming. As always, guys, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comments down below, especially with this new full world simulator that Microsoft Flight Sim is. And I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing off.